Hi everyone, it's Hopefully Skinny again, and I have my lovely guest and my best friend Lisa. And I know I just did a video of it today, but I wanted to snag her and get her to talk about some more difficult issues as far as like perspective of your friends and of the people that are close to you, and of course the person that's your support person, and some of the feelings they might have, because not all of them are pretty and all of them are fair, but they're just your feelings. And I think getting someone to honestly talk about even the uncharitable feelings that they have towards these people are going to be really difficult to do, but hopefully she can give you insight of why some of your friends may appear unsupportive when in fact maybe they are more supportive than you think. So I'm going to go ahead and let you start off, and then maybe I can help guide the conversation, ask some questions.
Um, well, if you bariatric patients have a friend or support person that's been close to you throughout this process, or that will be close to you throughout your process after you have your surgery, I suggest you get them to be here to listen to this ugly and honest account of what it's like to be a support person of a bariatric patient. We will talk today about feelings. If any of you could read that during the 10 seconds she had it up. Mood swings come later. We'll get to that, Nikki. Um, so, yeah, one thing that I found myself doing throughout this process was ignoring my own feelings and ignoring what I was going through while Nikki was going through this process, because I felt that as her support person, it was my job to set aside everything that was going through my own head and just deal with hers. However, that kind of manifested itself at times in less than, shall we say, less than positive ways. Um, there is a grieving process that you will be going through. I know that bariatric patients are taught to be aware of the emotional side of this process, and that they will be grieving the person that they were, they will be grieving their old habits, they will be grieving the food that they can no longer eat. That's perfectly normal, but what they also don't tell you is that your support person also grieves those things. They grieve that person. I've known this bitch for 30 years now. So I am very invested in the person that she is or was. And I have had to completely readjust my whole mindset to reintroduce this person into my own paradigm. And it's been a little traumatic for me, and at one point Nikki and I did have a very deep heart-to-heart, and I had to stop and really evaluate how I was feeling, because during those 30 years, Nikki and I have both swung back and forth with our weight loss. I know I have swung probably about 150 pounds one way or the other with my weight loss and gain. And so I've been thin, I've been heavy, and during both of those times, Nikki has been my support. She's been my validator. She's been there to say, it's okay. No matter what's going on, you're okay. And, you know, I know what you're going through. And that will come later.
No, this has nothing to do with it.
Yeah, a little bit. But she is no longer that person. Now Nikki is a very strong, very self-assured person who now has very good control over what she eats. And she has this tool to help her. So it's been difficult for me to, in a sense, lose that person in my life. And
Who would eat with you?
yeah, who would eat with me? The codependency, basically. I'm having to give up that codependent eating habit. And it's been good for me, but it's also been difficult, and I had to at one point finally be honest with both myself and Nikki and say, look, this is what I'm going through. You know, I've got some emotions tied up in this too. So while I know a lot of your classes have really stressed being careful of people who try to sabotage you, people who are invested in who you were before and how that's bad and they're evil and you need to watch out for those people, keep in mind that it's not always so cut and dried and black and white, because they may not mean to do anything bad. They just need to grieve. They need to let that part out, and you need to be a little understanding of what they're going through and hope that, you know, that person has the wherewithal to handle it in a graceful way.
Well, they have to reacclimate to the person,
Right.
because the core person is still the same.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that define us, people can argue with me, but one of the things that define us is how we feel about ourselves and how people feel about us in society and our weight. And when that one thing that you think defines you so much is gone, whether it's the weight or having really long hair and cutting it off or gaining weight or losing weight, whatever that is, it changes the dynamics with how you relate to other people and how people relate to you.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to deal with that change in dynamics with everybody around you, because it's a change within yourself as well. But I think that just the investment part is true, because we have friends that went through this, and seeing them lose weight and dramatically change, we were invested in who they were, and there's subtle changes in them where they've gotten quieter, or they're more confident, and their mannerisms change, how they view things change a little bit, what they want out of life changes.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to get used to that. We have to reacclimate to their life if we want to remain their friends. And they're exceptional people, so reacclimating is something that we're choosing to do. And I'm sure people are going to have to make that choice with me. Am I still worth being friends with them in their, world, after this surgery, or have I changed too much to fit into their life? Or have I changed too much to have them fit into my life? So it is a two-way street, because definitely I've seen some bariatric patients who go extreme and drop all their friends and drop their significant others because their life is changing and they feel like they deserve more. And I've seen people who tough it out, and things work out. So, I mean, I'm not expecting to lose any friends because I think I have some really amazing friends. So I do know that there might be some part where they have to reacclimate to me and me to them.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
It's difficult because we do establish a paradigm within our own lives, and in that paradigm we include our friends and the types of relationships we have with those people and the behaviors that we establish in those relationships that are acceptable or norms. And when that paradigm is challenged and everything is kind of yanked out from underneath you, there is a moment of like cognitive dissonance where you feel weird, you feel like something's wrong and you don't know what it is, and you feel like you shouldn't feel that way because everything is technically right because this person's making such a positive, incredible change in their life. But just know that it's going to happen. It's okay. You're not bad. You're not evil. You're not a terrible person. What makes you a terrible person is if you were to take those feelings and use them for negative ends. You don't want to try to hurt the person that you're going through this journey with, but you know, just be aware of them and be honest with them.
Well, I can also say that as far as relationship with people and food, that has definitely changed. Because there's a lot of times when just you and I would do a lot of socializing over food, or a lot of comforting each other with food, or a lot of entertaining with food. And just the other day, we were sitting watching TV, and I had, slowly been bringing the habit of eating in front of the TV, but, I had already had my dinner of 1/8 of a cup of Jello or pudding, and I turned to you and was like, man, I really miss eating while watching TV.
Mm-hmm.
And it's little things like that that change, and the fact that we can't comfort each other with food, we can't socialize with food. Like, people going out and doing things, right now, restaurants just are not an option for me. I can't have anything on the menu, even bariatric friendly orders. I just can't. So I know that dynamic is going to change with our friends, because all our friends are foodies. Before, and even the ones that, had the bariatric surgery were foodies before.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one thing that kind of grouped us all together, were that we were really huge foodies.
Definitely. So yeah, there is that. There's the changing social climate, which is more difficult too, because you're not quite sure how to interact with people. And I saw this happen recently at a get-together at a friend's house, and there was awkwardness. One thing that I found that happened there that really struck me, that goes back to food issues. Um, at this party, Nikki and another of our friends who's had the surgery were sitting together, and they were sipping their water. They were being good bariatric patients, and I was sitting next to them just hoovering the contents of this table, grazing. And I mean, granted, most of it was a platter of vegetables, but the sheer volume of what I was eating compared to the fact that they weren't eating made it difficult for me, because I looked at that for a moment and felt a little disgusted with myself. And while I didn't necessarily eat an outlandish amount of food, I still had this moment where I felt shame, and I felt like eater's remorse. And I had been dealing with that since Nikki had her surgery, watching these little tiny, tiny amounts of food that she was able to ingest and comparing it to what I was eating. And I urge you, don't do that to yourself. Your bariatric patient their bodies are essentially going through shock, and they're readjusting their eating habits, they're resetting their eating habits, and they're incapable of eating what your body needs to function. So they're taking all these vitamins. You are getting your vitamins from your food, you're getting your calories and energy from your food. It's okay. That's what you're supposed to be doing. Um, so yeah, Nikki had to actually point out to me that, I was not being ridiculous about, the amount that I was eating, that I was in fact being ridiculous for questioning that, and had me reevaluate everything I had eaten. And I hadn't really eaten anything that was terrible aside from a chocolate binge that may have or may not have happened when Nikki wasn't looking. But we're not going to talk about that. Um, But even that wasn't anything completely ridiculous or outlandish, and the chocolate binge was technically chocolate bar over, a period of time. So, yeah, don't compare your eating habits to bariatric patients. That is a road to failure. That's all I have to say about that.
So, um, we we talked about certain foods not to have in the house, and that was really difficult because you didn't understand everything that I was going through when I said no to certain foods, that they couldn't be in my house.
Right.
And I didn't respond well because my first automatic response was like, "What? How could you not know? Like, I just went through this surgery." But your perspective was vastly different than mine.
Right. I have been through the classes with you. I've listened to what you've said. I've watched the videos on YouTube with you. But I have not been through this program. I have not been through the journey that you have been through. And I'm also not always privy to what you're thinking or feeling. So I was under this gross misconception that this surgery was an instant solve-all, or an instant fix, and that it was going to allow you to make this change overnight that would keep you from craving horrible foods, would change what you wanted, and because you couldn't eat that amount, you wouldn't want to. I didn't understand the dynamics of head hunger and how it would still tie into what you're dealing with now, and how that would be difficult. So what I needed from you, and what I think all of you out there who are watching, what your support people and friends are going to need from you, is a clear explanation of why you don't want these things around you. Because while you can say no, you're dealing with adults who, have they have a need to understand what's going on instead of just a no. Because, that's kind of really not fair if you want people to completely support you, and by support, that also means to accept what you say completely.
Well, I also need to point out is the fact is your choices aren't hinged on anybody else's, and why if you want their support, you should try to explain it. But if they don't get it in the end, it's not for them to decide what you can and can't do. And if you need to say no foods in this house, and it makes somebody angry, then that's okay because they're not living in your body, they're not making the choices, or they have the same issues. So you have to be prepared to stick your ground when you need to.
Well, if they're getting angry, then there's obviously something else wrong there, and that's not a
That
lack of
that's not
understanding. That's their own emotional reaction.
That's not even something, and I mean, like, that's not even something that you have to be worried
Right.
about at that point. So it's not like I think I have an exceptional understanding person where we could have that conversation. It was a little heated, but we got down to it, and we came to an agreement and an understanding. Some people, I don't think will understand because once again we
They
come
don't
back
want to.
yeah, we come back into that investing to who you were and old habits they used to do with you, and like letting that go is going to be difficult. And sometimes you have to just bypass all that and just say it's because I said no. And you can, and you have to be strong. Sometimes you might have to be an asshole to do it, but in the end it's your health and you're making this choice for a reason, and you can't let somebody else sabotage you or their worries or concerns over the surgery derail you. Because why that's important, I'm not devaluing anything someone like Lisa would go through with me. In the end, I did the decision for me, not for her. And so that's why I think I'm very lucky, because she was willing to be here through everything and sit down and talk to us about our feelings that we had of grieving the life that we had together, as friends and as sisters and hetero life mates, that we had to change that. We had to change. We're still changing. We're still working on that, because we're not eating our meals together. We eat at different times, and we don't share meals together at all anymore. So that's definitely something that's a big change that happens, and it is a little sad. There is a moment when you're like, wow, this is sad. This is something, the time that we used to spend together, and it's not there. So I'm sure that if this was a significant other, a girlfriend or a husband or a boyfriend or something along those lines, would feel very disconnected and maybe shut out in this process, because they essentially have to do something that they've been doing with you, for a long time alone.
Yeah, you do feel a little left out in the process. And let that be your barometer too. If I know for myself, no, I didn't understand everything, and no, it didn't always make sense to me, but I wanted it to. I wanted to understand, and I wanted to connect on that level so that I could be more supportive. So if the person in your life is being difficult and they're reacting with constant anger and they're not trying, like genuinely trying to understand what you're going through when you're offering an explanation for why these changes have occurred, then maybe that's not a good person to have around. Maybe this person is not ready to be in any kind of relationship with someone going through this kind of change. It doesn't make them a bad person. It just maybe means that they're not in a place to accept your change and need to step back for a while.
Yeah, because there was even a point when I said, maybe, maybe you need to take a week off from me, just because it's difficult to deal with and you're right in the mix of it and it's hard. And you didn't want to take a week off.
Well,
But
sometimes it's easier if it's in your face.
yeah.
You're forced to deal with it instead of just going, okay, it's not happening now because I'm not here. But once it is happening and it's right there, then you literally have to deal with it. You don't really get a choice.
Yeah. And another thing is that there's two more things I want to talk about real quick before we say goodbye. And one of them was hormones, the edited version of hormones. And hormones change. Like, for me, they have changed. Like, yes, there were mood swings, but not that. No, she's joking, because it wasn't that bad. There's only been a few times where the drama came out, okay? So, and it's usually when I'm driving and people are dickholes and they do bad decisions. And
Like getting behind the wheel of a car while Nikki was behind the wheel of a car.
okay, let's be honest. That was funny, but let's be honest, because I don't want them thinking I'm crazy. But they cut you off, or they would like not use their signal and get over and almost hit you, or they and after, before, I would be like, at least use your signal, and I would get a little agitated, but it wasn't like, now I'm like, you freaking, and it's intense. And also, like, body chemistry change, like my personal smell has changed, and I don't like it because it's different. And as far as like emotions and other things that are going on with your body, without going into detail, because I think those are kind of private and every person is different. But they can affect your support person, or if you have another woman living with you, it can affect their bodies and their cycles. So just a heads up, support people. If you have a system that overpowers everybody else's, like me, you might be in a world of trouble. So, and then the other thing I wanted to talk about was, I forgot, and it was really important too.
Absent-mindedness and forgetfulness. They happen.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
And that was not intentional on her part.
And watch other bad habits you have. Like, they say, like, cross dependency happens when after bariatric surgery, like alcoholism, drugs. I mean, drugs not a big issue. I haven't heard too many people that get into drugs after a bariatrics, but alcoholism is one of them. Gambling and shopping. And I have exhibited some of the shopping, but to be fair, there's also added stress in my life. I'm getting ready to put my dog down, and I'm using that for comfort that I would usually use for food for. Yes, feelings. Yes, so I'm trying to find a healthier outlet with these emotions. So I think that is all, and I'm going to say goodbye. And thank you, Lisa, for sitting here and having an honest discussion with us about how it feels to be on the other side of the support person.
No problem.
Okay, have a good day, everyone. Bye.